on the fourth floor of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. On the night of October 14, 1977, music history's greatest voice was taking its last breath. At Bing Crosby's bedside were only family members and one other person, Dean Martin. Bing's final words would change Dean Martin's life forever. This wasn't just a farewell, this was a legacy from the greatest genius of a 40-year music career to the younger generation. And these words had the power to make Dean Martin cry as he left the hospital that night, but also to live the remaining 18 years of his life with the responsibility of this legacy. This is the story of an unforgettable transition in Hollywood, the end of an era, and true respect. The account of the final message Bing Crosby entrusted to Dean Martin. To understand the story of Bing Crosby and Dean Martin, you need to go back to the 1940s. This wasn't just two singers meeting. This was the meeting of two different eras of the music world. Bing Crosby was the world's most famous singer in the 1940s. He had changed music history with White Christmas. Radio, record sales, movie box offices. He was a legend at the top of everything. Dean Martin was still a struggling singer in the late 90s before forming a comedy duo with Jerry Lewis. He was a young man singing in small clubs in Steubenville, chasing his dreams. Their paths crossed and this encounter would forever shape Dean Martin's career. The first meeting between Dean Martin and Bing Crosby took place at Paramount Pictures Studios in Hollywood. Dean had just signed with Jerry Lewis, and they were on a studio tour. Bing was recording for the movie Road to Rio. When Dean heard his voice from the studio corridors, he was mesmerized. "Is that voice real?" Dean whispered to Jerry. "That's Bing Crosby, Dean. The world's greatest singer." Dean stood at the studio door, watching the record. Bing's voice control, his relaxed manner with the microphone. Everything was perfect. When the recording finished, Bing noticed Dean at the door. "You're the new kid, aren't you?" "Dean Martin?" Dean was shocked. Bing Crosby knew his name. "Yes, sir, I'm Dean Martin." "Don't call me sir, kid, call me Bing. I've heard your voice before. You have a beautiful tone." This compliment shocked Dean. The world's greatest singer was complimenting him. But Bing Crosby's next words about Dean Martin would shape his career. "Dean," Bing spoke with a serious expression. "You have vocal talent, but in this industry, talent isn't enough. You have to be authentic." "What does authentic mean, Mr. Crosby?" "What I mean is this. Don't copy someone else. Don't try to be Bing Crosby. Don't try to be Frank Sinatra, be Dean Martin. Find your own style, but everyone tries to sing like you. And that's why they fail, Dean. Do something different. Be relaxed, be natural. Sing as if you're chatting with your friends." This advice was the foundation of Dean Martin's signature style. The beginning of his cool, relaxed, effortless approach was Bing Crosby's advice that day. In the years after 1947, Bing Crosby became Dean Martin's unofficial mentor. Dean's advice influenced key decisions in Dean's career. When Dean's partnership with Jerry Lewis was successful, Bing told him, "Dean, comedy is good, but don't forget music. You're a singer." In the 1950s, when Dean focused on his solo singing career, Bing coached him privately. They spent time together in the studio, and Bing gave him advice about repertoire selection. "Dean," Bing told him one day, "you're not just singing, you're telling a story. Every song is an emotion. Every performance is a journey." Dean adopted this philosophy. He used this approach in hits like "That's Amore," "Ain't That a Kick in the Head," and "Everybody Loves Somebody." The relationship between them wasn't just professional, it was genuine friendship and mutual respect. Bing also taught Dean technical aspects, microphone technique, breathing control, phrasing. He covered every detail. Dean, Bing would show him in the studio. "The microphone is your friend. Don't be afraid of it, but respect it. Let every word be deliberate." When Dean recorded his first major hit, "That's Amore," in 1952, Bing was personally present. At the end of the session, he told Dean, "This song will be your breakthrough. But don't let ego take over." And indeed, "That's Amore" took Dean's career to the next level. Bing's prediction had come true. When Dean started his residency in Las Vegas in 1955, Bing came to opening night. After the performance, backstage, he told Dean, "You're no longer a student. Dean, you're a master." But Bing didn't just give career advice. He also provided guidance in Dean's personal life. When Dean had problems with his first marriage, Bing told him, balancing family and career is difficult. Dean, but you can't ignore either. Dean began to see Bing as a father figure. His relationship with his own father was complicated, but Bing gave him unconditional support. When Dean's career reached its peak in the 1960s, Bing warned him about the dangers of success. Dean, you're at the top right now, but staying at the top in this industry is harder than getting there. How do I stay at the top? Stay humble, stay hardworking, and most importantly, always be grateful to your fans. This advice was the secret to Dean Martin's career longevity. When Dean's TV variety show started, 1965, Bing became a regular guest. In each appearance, the two displayed magical chemistry. In one TV special, Bing publicly told Dean, "Dean Martin is my proudest achievement in music. He's an authentic artist." This public acknowledgement deeply touched Dean. Bing rarely gave public compliment. Backstage, Dean told Bing, "Without you, I wouldn't be here today." "Dean," Bing replied, "I just pointed out your potential. The talent and hard work are entirely yours." But in 1977, everything began to change. Bing Crosby's health problems emerged, and Dean Martin would have to prepare to lose his mentor. In early 1977, Bing Crosby's heart problems began. The first warning signs were mild chest pains, but doctors had detected a serious condition. Bing was hiding this situation from family and very close friends. Dean Martin was one of them. "Dean," Bing told him in a phone conversation, "doctors say I need to rest a bit. But you know me, I don't like to rest." Dean had noticed the tiredness in Bing's voice. The normally energetic man seemed tired. Actually, Bing's health problems had begun showing subtle signs, and Dean was the first to notice. In one recording session, Bing had shown unusual fatigue. The man who normally handled multiple takes energetically had gotten tired after a few songs. "Bing, are you okay?" Dean had asked privately. "Of course, Dean. Just getting old, I guess." But Dean hadn't believed this casual dismissal. He had known Bing for 30 years, and he never complained about anything. Dean secretly contacted Bing's family. Bing's wife Catherine revealed the truth to Dean. "Dean, doctors have detected cardiac issues. Bing might need major surgery." This news devastated Dean. Bing was his rock, his mentor. In spring 1977, Dean began giving Bing extra attention. Regular visits, longer phone calls, subtle care. Bing was initially resistant. "Dean, I'm not an invalid. Treat me normally." But Dean was persistent. He was trying to provide support without hurting Bing's pride. Dean began organizing Bing's favorite activities. Golf trips, studio visits, quiet dinners. He adapted everything to suit Bing's health. In June 1977, Bing experienced a mild heart episode. He was hospitalized briefly, but recovered. Dean stayed at the hospital with Bing that night. For the first time, both discussed mortality. "Dean, I'm 74 years old. I've lived a great life." "Bing, you'll make more music. You're invincible." Bing smiled sadly. "Dean, nobody is invincible. But you're right, we need to make more music." In September 1977, Bing's condition worsened. Breathing difficulties began. Energy levels dropped dramatically. Dean began visiting him regularly. They would spend hours at Bing's Beverly Hills home, talking about old times. "Dean, I'm a lucky man," Bing told him one afternoon. "Great career, wonderful family, and friends like you. What more could I ask for?" But Dean was beginning to see the shadow of farewell in Bing's eyes. On the night of October 12, 1977, Dean Martin's phone rang. It was Bing's son Gary calling. "Dean, Dad has been taken to the hospital. Heart attack. Doctors say it's critical." Dean immediately went to Cedars-Sinai. Bing was in intensive care, connected to monitors, but conscious. When Dean saw him, he was shocked. This powerful voice, this giant of entertainment, now looked fragile. "Hey, Dean," Bing spoke in a weak but clear voice. "You came." "Of course I came, Bing. How are you?" "I'll be fine. Doctors are optimistic." But Dean read something else in Bing's eyes. That night Dean stayed in the hospital waiting room. Family members came and went, but Dean didn't move. The nurses knew Dean and gave him special consideration. "Mr. Martin, you should go home. We'll call you." "No, I'm staying here. Bing knows I'm here." On the morning of October 13, Doctors spoke privately with Dean. Mr. Martin, Mr. Crosby's condition is very serious. Cardiac function is significantly compromised. How much time does he have? Difficult to say, hours, days, maybe weeks. But the prognosis isn't positive. Dean's world shattered at that moment. Bing might be dying. Dean spent hours with Bing that day, quietly sitting, occasionally talking, sharing memories. Bing was intermittently conscious, but in his lucid moments, he had deep conversations with Dean. Dean, Bing said at one point, do you have any regrets? About music? No, you showed me the right path. Good, I've always been watching your career. You exceeded my expectations. On the morning of October 14, Bing's condition temporarily improved. Dean felt hope, but in the afternoon, a sudden decline began. For the next 2 days, Dean stayed at the hospital by Bing's side. They recalled old memories, talked about music, but on the night of October 14, Bing's condition suddenly deteriorated. At 11:30 p.m. on October 14, Dean was sitting beside Bing. Family members were in the room, but Bing specifically wanted to keep Dean by his side. Dean, Bing's voice was barely a whisper. I want to tell you something. Dean leaned closer. Yes, Bing, I'm listening. Bing's eyes locked onto Dean's eyes. And at that moment, Dean understood these would be farewell words. Dean, you are my greatest achievement. Dean was confused. What do you mean, Bing? I sang many songs, made many albums, made many movies, but your success, this is my greatest pride. Dean's eyes filled with tears. But Bing wasn't finished yet. Dean, Bing continued, your voice is much more beautiful than mine. You're genuine, you're authentic. I always relied on technique, but you sing, with your soul. Bing, what are you saying? You're the greatest voice of our time. No, Dean, I had the greatest technique, but you have the greatest heart. Dean was crying now. Bing's words were touching his deepest insecurity. And one more thing, Dean, I want a promise from you. Anything, Bing. Never give up music. You're not just an entertainer, you're an artist, and the world needs your voice. Bing paused, his breathing became labored, but he continued. And Dean, you are my legacy. When I die, you will continue. You will keep music alive. Dean's heart was breaking. Bing, you won't die, you'll recover. Bing made a weak smile. Dean, I'm 74 years old. I've lived a great life, but the most important thing is this. I continue in you. And then Bing Crosby said his final words to Dean Martin. Dean Martin, you're perfect exactly as you are. Never change. And remember, I will always live in your voice. After Bing Crosby said these words, he squeezed Dean's hand. And on October 14, 1977, at 11:47 p.m., he died peacefully. Dean Martin was totally devastated at that moment. This wasn't just losing a friend, this was losing a mentor, father figure, and source of inspiration. Bing's final words echoed in Dean's mind. You are my legacy. As Dean left the hospital, he was a completely changed person. Bing's final words had made a profound impact on him, but the full magnitude of this impact would emerge in the following years. Bing Crosby's final words completely shaped Dean Martin's remaining 18 years. And the effect of this promise on Dean changed the music industry forever. In the weeks after Bing's death, Dean Martin adopted a totally different approach to music. Previously, Dean sometimes treated his recordings casually. But after Bing's words, "You're an artist," he began treating every recording session as sacred. Remember, boys, Dean would tell musicians in the recording studio, we're not just making music, we're creating something eternal. Dean also added Bing's favorite songs to his repertoire. White Christmas, Pennies from Heaven, Swinging on a Star, he interpreted them all in his own style. But most importantly, Dean followed Bing's advice, never change. Dean's natural, effortless style became even more refined. He perfected what Bing had taught him. In 1978, Dean Martin started a secret project. This project wasn't made public, but it was the ultimate tribute to Bing Crosby. Dean finished Bing's unreleased songs. Bing's notebooks had half-completed lyrics. Dean completed them and organized private recording sessions. These recordings were never released. Dean only gave them to Bing's family. But Dean showed extraordinary care in the production process. These aren't just songs, Dean told the sound engineer. This is Bing's legacy. It has to be perfect. This project took Dean 6 months. He maintained Bing's standards in every detail. From 1978 to 1995, Dean Martin repeated the same ritual every year. He would perform a tribute to Bing on his death anniversary. These performances weren't public. Dean would book small venues, invite only close friends, and he would dedicate the entire evening to Bing's song. Every October 14 night, Dean would tell the audience, "Tonight we remember Bing Crosby. Not just a great singer, but a great man, and I'm sharing his voice with you." These performances were among Dean's most emotional moments, because he was literally fulfilling Bing's final words, "I live in your voice." The audience could feel the magic of these performances. Dean wasn't just singing Bing's songs, he was channeling Bing's spirit. Bing Crosby's final words to Dean Martin influenced not just Dean, but the entire music industry. Dean passed Bing's advice to younger singers. He shared the same wisdom with Frank Sinatra Jr., Sammy Davis Jr.'s son, and other next-generation performers. "Bing taught me this," Dean would tell young singers. "Authenticity is everything. If you copy someone else, you become disposable. But if you're authentic, you become irreplaceable." This philosophy formed the core of Dean's teaching approach. He felt the responsibility of passing Bing's legacy to the next generation. But the true power of Bing Crosby's final words to Dean Martin emerged at Dean's own death in 1995. In the 1980s, Dean Martin's entire approach to life continued to be influenced by Bing's final words. Dean developed a systematic approach to passing what Bing had taught him to younger artists. When Dean Martin established his own record label in 1983, the first priority was to discover emerging talent. "I want to give what I received from Bing Crosby to the next generation," Dean told record executives. Dean started mentorship programs for young singers at his label. He would work personally with each artist, sharing the advice Bing had given him. "Authenticity is everything," Dean would tell young performers. "This was the first lesson Bing Crosby taught me." In 1985, Dean started a secret project, a Bing Crosby tribute album. But this wasn't for public release. Dean selected Bing's lesser-known songs and recorded them in his own style. Album title, "For Bing, with Love Private Collection." Dean only gave these recordings to Bing's widow Catherine and his children. Catherine Crosby wrote to Dean, "Dean, these recordings perfectly capture Bing's spirit. He truly lives in your voice." In the late 1980s, subtle but meaningful changes occurred in Dean Martin's concerts. Dean would perform one of Bing's songs in every show, but wouldn't announce it. The audience often didn't realize it, but Dean knew. "White Christmas," "Swinging on a Star," "Pennies from Heaven." These songs became regular parts of Dean's repertoire. When Dean performed these songs, he wouldn't exactly copy Bing's style. Instead, he would blend Bing's spirit with his own interpretation. Critics noticed and praised these performances, but Dean never explained the connection. Bing's influence also became permanent in Dean's personal life. Every morning, while drinking coffee, Dean would listen to Bing Crosby records. This continued for 8 years. In Dean's home study, there was Bing's autographed photo. "To Dean, my greatest pride. Keep singing, keep being authentic." Dean would look at this photo every day and have mental conversations with Bing. "Morning Bing, another day to honor your legacy." When Dean Martin's health began to decline in the early 1990s, Bing's words became even more important. In Dean's last recording sessions, 1993, 1994, he was physically weak but vocally strong. "Bing's spirit gives me strength," Dean told studio musicians. Dean's final album, Forever Cool, was actually a secret tribute to Bing Crosby. There was a hidden message in the album liner notes. "To the man who taught me that music is not performance, it's communication. Thank you for living in my voice." When Dean Martin died on December 25, 1995, family members made an incredible discovery while sorting through his personal effects. In Dean's bedroom, in the top drawer of his nightstand, there was a handwritten note, and this note was what Dean read every night before sleep. What was written in the note was, "Bing's last words to me. October 14, 1977. Dean Martin, you're perfect exactly as you are, never change, and remember, I will always live in your voice." Below the note,
written in Dean's own handwriting, were these words: "I kept my promise, Bing. I never changed, and you lived in my voice every single day." This note revealed that Dean Martin had used Bing's final words as a daily reminder for 18 years. Bing Crosby's final words to Dean Martin became one of music history's most powerful mentor-student exchanges. Bing's words, "You are my legacy," became literal truth. Dean Martin passed on Bing's teachings, philosophy, and approach to music to the next generation, and most importantly, Bing's final promise was fulfilled. He truly lived in Dean's voice. In every Dean Martin performance, in every recording, Bing Crosby's influence could be heard. But this wasn't imitation, this was authentic legacy transmission. Bing Crosby didn't just say farewell to Dean Martin, he gave him eternal responsibility to preserve authentic music and pass it to the next generation. And Dean Martin honored this responsibility until the end of his life. That's why Bing Crosby's final words weren't just goodbye. This was the passing of the torch, transmission of legacy, and promise of continuity. And today, when we listen to Dean Martin's songs, we actually hear Bing Crosby's voice too, because true legacy never dies. It passes from one great artist to another.